Hey, everybody. All right, y'all, go and grab your seats for us. Thanks, everyone, for braving the weather. It's a killer turnout, all things considered. How's everyone doing tonight? All right. So, Adrian Ballinger, you might have heard of him. He's a British American certified IFMGA, AMGA mountain guide. That, one, explains his weird accent, and two, means he's at the apex of professional mountain sports. He's the founder and CEO of Alpenglow Expeditions located right here in Olympic Valley. They are amazing people doing amazing things. He's been guiding full-time for over 25 years and has led over 150 international climbing expeditions on 6 continents. He's made 18 successful summits of 8,000-meter peaks. And as I understand, he's the only American to have made 3 successful ski descents of 8,000-meter peaks. Let's clap for that. But being the chronic underachiever that he is, he's also the 4th American to have summited both Everest and K2 without supplemental oxygen. But to us, if you have the great fortune of knowing Adrian, he's a humble, dear friend, and one who has supported the growth of this speaker series, along with his better half, Emily Harrington, for over 15 years. He's one of us local kooks that lives right here in North Lake Tahoe, so let's give it up for the one and only Adrian Ballinger.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Wow, I mean, first of all, I just want to start by saying thank you. Thank you to Brendan, of course, to Alpenglow Sports, to the Winter Speaker Series, and to all of you for coming out tonight. That parking lot was dangerous. That might be the most dangerous thing I've done in quite a while. And I think there is something so special about gathering in person to share stories, to tell stories, to share what this community does and what we go out and adventure, and then we come back and we bring it back. And like Brendan said, I've been lucky enough to be coming to the Winter Speaker Series shows for 15 years. I think I gave my first show in 2009 when we were still in the Sawtooth Ridge Cafe. And I never dreamt that, almost 15 years later, I'd be here giving another show in OVL with a packed house. And then even better, I have my 6-week-old son sitting in the front row with Emily. Yeah. We'll see if he makes it. But when I think about this series, my dream is 15 years from now, we'll be back in this room. It'll be Arrow and his bros and his sisters and his friends, all up here giving a slideshow, and I'll be the old dude in the back, heckling Rick Sylvester, right? That's my dream. And, we're all a part of doing that here. And with that said, I also think it's just so amazing that we're able to also now offer this slideshow series online as a free live stream worldwide across the United States. So I want to give it up for Brendan and his team for making that happen. And the reason I bring it up, I think we all know how lucky and privileged many of us have worked very hard to be here and to make a life here in Tahoe. But we just get to be surrounded by this every day. We see Jeremy Jones. We see Elise in the KT line. We see all these people who might also be our heroes. And not everyone has that inspiration from the mountains right outside their front door, and we do. So getting to share that, I'm just so stoked for the people who are tuned in on the live stream, and I hope you come out and visit and see this place in person. So here we go. What you're here to see tonight, you're here to see this, skiing at 27,500 feet. Be safe. Now, it's not exactly a Matchstick or TGR film. If that's what you were coming out for tonight, there's still time to head for the door. It's a little slower than that. You signed up for coming to see me ski. And this spring on Makalu, before we get to this, my season turned out to be a little bit more complicated than I expected. My goal and plan for the spring was to attempt a ski descent of the never-before-skied fifth tallest mountain in the world without supplemental oxygen. It's kind of up there on my spectrum of risk tolerance. The twist is the picture on the right. 4 weeks before leaving home, my wife, Emily Harrington, and I find out she's pregnant. Now, there's lots of stories and learnings here. They're not the focus of the show, but I thought I'd mention and share just a couple for those of you who might be helpful. Number one, it turns out that Alex Honnold's recommended form of birth control, an app called the Natural Cycles app, is not effective. Number two, calling into your wife's first prenatal appointment on a satellite phone from 20,000 feet and 12,000 miles away and telling the doctor about how it's really cold where you are and it's 2 a.m. and you're 100% engaged and invested in this birth process does not impress the obstetrician. And number three, I have a very understanding and badass and rad wife, Emily. Now, let's be clear. Emily was not sitting at home wishing I was with her. 2 weeks after I left for Makalu in the Himalaya, she was on an expedition to the Arctic, to Baffin Island, to ski steep couloirs with a badass crew of girls, and I was clearly not invited. So I'm not the very worst husband out there. But what this twist, finding out we were pregnant, really meant for me, other than FOMO about what I might be missing at home, or what if I didn't come home? It was the beginning of a creation of a new lens to my high-altitude climbing and skiing. I spent a lot of time this season feeling really alone, which I haven't really ever felt before in the mountains. Himalayan mountains are big, as you can see here. They're really big. And most of the time, the action, it's actually not action. You know, everything moves so slowly. Progress often feels non-existent on these big expeditions. And that means a lot of time to think. And a lot of time to think without distractions is one of the things I love about high-altitude climbing. It's one of the things I've most appreciated. But with this turn in my life and plan, a lot of time meant a lot of time in my head wondering how or whether I was going to change and what that potential change means to me and to who I am. And, you know, trying audacious things where I'm fully aware that failure is actually a lot more likely of an outcome than success, that process has driven and fulfilled me for decades. It's why I do this, and I don't ever want to lose the taste for that. And skiing 8,000-meter peaks, it's been that since the beginning. Now, this clip I'm going to show you, it's a little long, so I'm going to click play and then keep talking. But seriously, when I think of audacious and hard, think of the beginning of 8,000-meter peak skiing. The 1970 attempt, this is real, the 1970 attempt to ski Mount Everest by Yuichiro Miura. Think about it, it's 1970. Barely anyone has even climbed Mount Everest, less than 100 people. The skis are terrible. The parachute looks like it's from the circus. And he just points it. He has this belief, like, this is going to work out. I'm going to be the first person to ski Mount Everest. And, yeah, we should just take a minute here. Like, he was doing pretty good for a while. For those of you that don't know, this is the Lotte face. He's at about 24,000 feet. The steepness is probably 47, 48 degrees. It's generally icy. It doesn't look like it's going great right now. But he's holding on. Like I told you, this clip is long, but come on. And it actually looks like he's gonna make it. Like he's actually pulling off. He is skiing Everest, and then there's ice. He hits the ice band. Oh, and then he's down. Luckily, he has his din set effectively on his boots and his skis. The skis do come off. Now, you guys look pretty fascinated. We could just keep watching this. Wait till, have the skis come off yet? Yeah. It's getting real. Oh, there it goes. Yeah. It's getting real. So my favorite part about this is the good news is he's okay. 45 years later, I was on Mount Everest in 2009, and Yuichiro Miura was there. What, are you guys distracted? Come on, listen to me. 45 years later, he comes back to try to be the oldest man to climb Mount Everest with his son. And the guy brings skis back up and makes like 10 turns on the Lhotse face. He actually makes turns. So, yeah. I should pretty much just end the show right now. Like, nothing in the next 35 minutes is going to look like that just did. Like, the full film is actually streaming now on a platform, Peacock. It's called The Man Who Skied Everest. Maybe it should be called The Man Who Fell Down Everest. But like, it is an incredible accomplishment and attempt for 1970. An interest in skiing, it really just grew from there. Skiers and snowboarders began to have sporadic but real success in the big mountains. And I should explain 8,000 meter peaks, just for anyone who doesn't know. It's kind of just this group of peaks that we talk a lot about because they're the tallest peaks in the world. 8,000 meters is about 26,000 feet. There's 14 mountains in the world that sit above 26,000 feet or 8,000 meters. They sit in Pakistan, Nepal, and Tibet. They're the top of the world. And also I want to talk about, as you can imagine, there is a lot of debate of what constitutes a ski or snowboard descent on these peaks. Did you use ropes? Did you ski from the true summit? Did you ever take your skis off? Did you use oxygen? Did you use a parachute like Yuichiro did? And like, I'm going to leave that debate to the Twitter fights and the chat forums. But I will say this, I think it's essential to acknowledge and be honest and very clear about what you did or didn't do in the big mountains. There are no referees, there are no judges. But when we're not clear, we might take something away from the next generation who could do things better than we do. So that's really my thing. Like, imagine these peaks being skied one day with flow and speed, without ropes, without Sherpa, without oxygen, maybe not even on the normal climbing routes. Like, that will be incredibly badass and an important move for the sport, and that will come, and I can't wait to see it. But a few of the ski descents I wanted to point out that came after the 1970 Everest attempt and long before mine. The first complete top-to-bottom ski descent of an 8,000-meter peak by a French skier named Sylvain Saudin. In 1982, he skied Gasherbrum 1 in Pakistan. It was the first one. And then Everest's south side was legitimately first skied top-to-bottom without a parachute by Davo Karnikar in 2000. He put his skis on the summit, and he didn't take them off until base camp. It was incredible. Everest's north side, kind of cool. It actually had a first snowboard descent, not a ski descent, by Marco Siffredi in 2001. Never been repeated. And then K2, it's shown here in this picture along with G2. This is a Ming Poon photo, who you guys have already cheered tonight. You knew it wasn't mine if it looks like that. K2 in 2018 was skied by a Polish skier named Andrzej Bargiel. And K2 is steep and technical, and everyone knew it was going to be hard to ski. Lots of people had tried, but everyone knew it was skiable. What's important about Andrzej's ski is he did it without supplemental oxygen. It was the first big mountain skied without supplemental oxygen, and it's like kind of mind-blowing. It's on Red Bull TV if you have an opportunity to watch it. It's really special. And then one more ski descent I wanted to mention was Lhotse. And Hillary Nelson and Jim Morrison in 2018. It was notable, obviously, because Lhotse, the fourth tallest mountain in the world, was previously unskied. That made it special. But it was probably more special, more because of the insanely natural and inspiring line. Nothing like it had been skied on an 8,000-meter peak before. Nothing like it has been skied on an 8,000-meter peak since. Now, my journey to 8,000-meter peak skiing, this photo might tell you all you need to know. I did not grow up as a race kid. I was definitely not on skis at age 2, like the local crew here in Tahoe often is. But as soon as my family moved to New England from England, I was all in on sliding on snow, on skis at my local ski hill, Mount Wachusett in central Massachusetts. Go Mount Wachusett. And apparently also standing sideways on my sled on the hill next to my house. This was the high point of my snowboarding career to date, but it's never too late, right? Along with that late start, a 15-year detour into telemark skiing, along with a serious lack of spatial awareness in the air, both shown here in this photo. These things did not help my young dreams of becoming a pro skier. But that love and passion for sliding on snow, it never lessened. Like, who was on KT today? Who was out in the snow? It was sick. It was amazing. Like, we'll do it again tomorrow. Like, I still love it as much as I did as a kid back on that hill in Holden, Massachusetts. And alongside all the work I was putting into finally becoming a respectable skier in the 3 decades since those photos, I also found my place as a high-altitude climber. Over the years from 2007 to today, I've been on 25 8,000-meter peak expeditions. I've summited 8,000-meter peaks 18 times, like Brendan said, including 8 total summits of Mount Everest, and a couple, Everest and K2, without oxygen. Now, maybe the important part of that, if an average 8,000-meter peak expedition is 2 months long, that means a little more than 4 years of my life, 10% of my life on this planet, has been actually living and working on the sides of the tallest mountains in the world. And if I have one lesson, not that anyone's asking, but if I have one lesson for the next generation of 8,000-meter peak riders, and it's probably no different than the next generation of Sierra skiers or Alps steep skiers or Alaska riders, it's being there. It takes a massive commitment of time and patience. The confluence of circumstances that have to come together to safely ski one of the tallest mountains in the world, it very rarely happens. But it does happen, and if you're there and you've done the prep and you have the skills, then it goes. For me, the first time it went was in 2011. For the 4th year in a row, I was spending September and October of 2011 on Manaslu, the 8th tallest mountain in the world. And while skiers had skied most of the mountain, no one had ever actually attempted to ski from the summit. After 4 years in a row on the mountain, living on the mountain, guiding on the mountain, I knew exactly what conditions I needed to attempt to ski from the very top. And we just stumbled into the right conditions in 2011. My partner, Russian skier Sergei Baranov, he began his ski 30 meters below the top due to the exposure. I skied from the summit, but only thanks to a belay from my longtime climbing Sherpa partner, Dorje Sonam. And it's pretty wild. What he agreed to do to give me the opportunity to ski, he agreed to rope up with me on the summit and sit right on top of the cornice. I put my skis on. The deal was I'd try to ski off the south side, the side that looked skiable. If I fell, he'd jump off the north side of the ridge, and we'd be totally fine. We'd just be hanging there on the ridge, and it would be cool. And it worked out. I removed the rope after about 6 or 8 turns showing that the snow was edgeable. I met up with Sergei 30 meters lower, and we continued the 8,000-foot ski descent. And as you could probably see in this pic, like, it wasn't good snow, but it was really special. From there, Sergei and I continued to make an early attempt to ski Mount Lhotse, the 4th tallest peak, in 2013. And you could see why I said Hillary and Jim's line was iconic, right? Like, I probably don't even need to point the line out. It's the obvious couloir. It's meant to have a lot more snow in it than this. This was 2013 in the spring, a season where the couloir actually had hundreds of feet of rock and ice in the middle. So that season ended up a whole bunch of taking my skis for a walk, including to over 24,000 feet on Lhotse, and then to over 26,000 feet on Everest. We carried our skis up and carried them right back down again. We did ski part of the Lhotse face and through the Western Coombe. It'll be forever some of the most memorable turns I've made, but they were awful. Rail sliding, or as close as I'll ever get to rail sliding, on ladders, trying to find a way to descend the Khumbu Icefall on skis was probably the skiing highlight of that season. Cho-Oyu, the 6th tallest mountain in the world, and unofficially the easiest 8,000-meter peak, it's been kinder to me. I've actually made 2 complete ski descents of Cho-Oyu. It's like the Rubicon of the Himalaya. I skied it first in 2013 with Sergey in the autumn after the smackdown we had experienced on Lhotse and Everest in the spring. We actually had amazing top-to-bottom conditions, like you can see in this photo. And then I went back to Cho-Oyu again in 2016, this time with Emily, on an attempt to be the fastest ever to climb an 8,000-meter peak in less than 2 weeks, door-to-door, USA to USA. Emily's skiing in this little video might show you how fun and what a great idea that was.
Jump turns at 26,000 feet. Painful, to say the least.
It turns out being disgustingly unacclimatized to 26,000 feet skiing is not a great idea. But we were able to ski top to bottom except for one 20-meter ice cliff. And it was awesome to prove to ourselves that with a lot of luck and a lot of infrastructure, thanks to Alpenglow expeditions, it was possible to go really fast on a big mountain and start compressing these experiences. But during all that time in the Himalaya, from 2007 to 2022, those combined 4 years of time spent living on the sides of big mountains, this mountain eluded me, Makalu, the 5th tallest mountain in the world. It's just a little bit different. Makalu is 8,481 meters tall, 27,825 feet, and it's just this foreboding, four-sided black pyramid that sits all alone a few miles from Everest on the border between Tibet and Nepal. This is a Dutch photographer named Harry Keekstra that took this photo from Everest. Makalu was first successfully climbed in 1955 by 2 French climbers, kind of amazing. And its most notable early ski attempt was by the Italian Hans Kamalander, perhaps the most prolific of the early 8,000-meter peak skiers. And he skied from 24,500 feet in 1986. And that high point held until 2015. But I first attempted Makalu in 2012, again with the Russian Sergei Baranov. We actually had good skiing, especially this day during acclimatization. We skied from Kamalander's high point, the entire Makalu La Couloir, from 24,500 feet in stable and actually fun conditions. We were so psyched. And it was a revelation to actually ski good snow. This is Sergey skiing below Camp 3. This was early on in my Himalayan skiing career, just 1 year after the success and first ski descent of Manaslu. And I was starting to think, like, why doesn't everyone do this? Like, this stuff is cruiser. Turns out, 8,000-meter peak skiing has its challenges. We ended up getting completely shut down on Makalu in 2012 by the jet stream. 100-mile-per-hour plus winds just hammered the mountain for the entire season above 25,000 feet, destroying our tents, destroying the snow. We ended up leaving after repeated attempts to get higher, having skied from Kamalander's high point, but leaving 3,500 feet of vertical untouched above us. So in 2015, I returned to attempt Makalu again, a second time, this time with an all-athlete friend crew from Tahoe, including Emily Harrington. With Em on the trip, of course, you knew there had to be rock climbing involved as well, like somehow she'd figure it out. And Jim Morrison and Hillary Nelson were our other 2 ski partners. So you know there was a lot of power and a lot of drive to succeed on this attempt. Also, a lot of arm wrestling matches. Not shown here, Emily won them all. But we were also supported by a really strong Alpenglow expeditions team of Sherpa from Nepal, some of the strongest climbers at high altitude on the planet. We were the only team on the mountain that autumn, so having a strong team that trusted each other was really essential. And in the autumn of 2015, we actually had great skiing again on Makalu. We had actual powder skiing up high, and during our acclimatization rotations, it looked like this. This is Jim making turns below Camp 2 at 21,000 feet. But once again, we were stopped. In 2015, the problem wasn't wind, it was snow. At almost 26,000 feet, 2 of my best Sherpa climbing partners, Palden and Mingma, they were in front, on oxygen, breaking trail and fixing ropes for our ski team, helping us to conserve energy for the descent. when the slope broke around them. The avalanche caught them both, and while they were okay, they were really banged up physically and perhaps more importantly, emotionally. It seemed clear that the risk was too high and that there was almost no margin for error in the snowpack, especially being a single team alone on a mountain with no chance of helicopter rescue being so high. So our team left the mountain. Once again, we left 3,000 feet of the peak unskied. And looking back on that trip now, after we lost Hillary this year to an 8,000-meter ski attempt on Makalu, of course, I will always remember, Hillary's example of leadership and strength and stoke that she shared with us every day on the mountain. But I'll also hold on and be inspired by this. Hillary decided to bring her family to Makalu. Bringing a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old on a 2-week trek through the jungle, endless leeches, and over 18,000-foot passes seemed fucking crazy to me in 2015 and impossible to imagine doing. But Hillary showed not only that it was possible, but also that it was fun. These kids thrived. They played with the local kids. They loved the leeches that I couldn't stand. And there is no part of me and Emily raising Arrow, our 6-week-old son, that doesn't benefit from this example Hillary's given us. She showed us that the combination of a family and a career in the mountains is possible and powerful in this world. So if you got a drink in your hand, preferably whiskey, this is my moment to get my shit together. Hillary loved whiskey, so now's the time. To Hillary, we love you. Fast forward to today. We're back in 2022, 7 years later. Other than a quick second ski lap on Cho-Yu in 2016, I focused my personal expedition dreams on those climbs without supplemental oxygen. And they took some effort for those years. And then COVID kept me out of the Himalaya for 2.5 years. During those 7 years that I was away from 8,000-meter peak skiing, 2 more of the unskied 8,000-meter peaks were skied, the groundbreaking descents of Lhotse and K2 that we've already talked about. So that brought me back to Makalu. It was now one of only 2 8,000-meter peaks left that had not been skied or snowboarded. It was also the only 8,000-meter peak I had tried and ultimately not gone back and succeeded on. COVID days left me a lot of time to ruminate on that, and by the time I felt like we could safely and ethically operate in the Himalaya again, Makalu was the only place I wanted to be. And with my experience climbing Everest in K2 without oxygen, I wanted to try to meet the bar that Andrej had set on K2. I wanted to ski an 8,000-meter peak without supplemental oxygen. Now, many of you in this room and probably on the live stream have been on expeditions to far-flung spots, so you know the deal. We affectionately call this part of the expedition, actually most of the expedition, the duffel shuffle. A Himalayan expedition is basically just a never-ending process of moving thousands of pounds of gear and equipment and food around the place. So, here's my bags in a car in Tahoe. Here they are in an airport in Reno. Here they are on a plane. Look, another airport, Kathmandu. Then they're on the tarmac waiting for the heli. Then they're in the heli. Gotta love helis. There's no weight limit or baggage rules on helis in Nepal. It's a lot more fun than here. Needless to say, I was not wearing a seatbelt while I was in this helicopter. And this heli flight was actually a little more exciting than most. Some pretty big thunderstorms shut us from flying down the valley towards Makalu, and you can't just pop over ridges when the mountains are 25,000 feet tall. So we ended up stuck in a helicopter flying around running out of fuel, looking for a flat spot to land, which we found here. So here's Simone trying to figure out where to land. This was definitely one of the most fun parts of my expedition. The joy of taking selfies in front of a helicopter that landed in a school playground in a town 10 days walk from the nearest road. It's pretty fun. We finally got back in the air the next morning with fuel. It was dropped off by a second helicopter. We flew through into the mountains, down the valley, and finally the duffel shuffle ended for a couple of days. My bags were unpacked at base camp at 15,000 feet. And I was so excited to be here, but it was tempered by one thing. It was Makalu. Above us, it looked like this. Now, you guys know I was going skiing. In 2012, Makalu looked like this from base camp. In 2015, it looked like this from base camp. And just so I don't forget to show you later, one more perspective of our seasons. 2012 from 25,000 feet where we were turned around. 25,000 feet in 2015 where we were turned around. 25,000 feet this year. Like something's missing in this photo, but I can't figure out what it is. But it's different. But the mountain conditions don't really matter at this point in the expedition as the heli flies away. You're there. You're still sitting in base camp with an altitude headache, loads of tech that doesn't work, trying to download pictures of an ultrasound of your 10-week-old fetus named Sprinkle, and you're wondering about your life choices. It's true. And they were choices why I was there. I mean, the getting pregnant right before the expedition, that just kind of happened. I haven't figured it out yet. Maybe someone can explain it to me. But having much less snow on the mountain, that was a choice. In short, in both 2012 and 2015, I attempted Makalu in the autumn, the post-monsoon season. That meant there was lots and lots of snow from the monsoon, the wet part of the year, which is actually the summit. And I'd been shut down twice, maybe because of where Makalu sits in the range. It gets a lot more snow and a lot more wind than a lot of other mountains. So I made a conscious decision to attempt this time in the spring, after the winter. But the winter in the Himalaya is cold and windy. It's not snowy. So I thought the mountain and weather may be more stable. And, well, it was. It literally only snowed 4 inches in the 2 months we spent on the mountain. This was the storm. This was it. That's it. The snow on our tents. The entirety of our snowfall for the season. And this was the only avalanche I saw in 2 months. It's kind of cheating even to call it an avalanche. It was actually a serac fall, an ice cliff falling far away from where we were climbing. And these are good things. They're what I asked for. They're what I wanted on the mountain. But you may be able to guess what 4 inches of snow in 2 months, combined with 100 mile per hour winds on a daily basis, means for the quality of skiing. I mean, shoot, you don't have to guess what that means. We had that in Tahoe last season for 2 months. Looks kind of like this. So good. At the beginning of that video, I said, best turns of the day, like I was trying to hype myself up, like this is actually good. But the thing was, it was skiable. It was all skiable, as long as you called this skiing, and you called this skiing, and this, there was a lot of this. Griffin shooting photos of me, he got a lot of this. But as I acclimatized on the mountain, you know, it was very clear. The skiing wasn't good, it was bad, but it was doable. And even better than that, the risks were relatively predictable. Avalanche risk, serac risk, rockfall, storms, those risks can be really unpredictable. We all know that from our time in the mountains. I sometimes hate those risks. In those situations, it gets easy to justify decisions because they don't go bad and they don't go bad. We call this confirmation bias in kind of guiding and avalanche education. It feels like we're making the right calls until someday we get it wrong. Now, it's not like we can avoid those risks in the mountains, nor should we avoid them. Like there would be no such thing as powder skiing on big lines if we didn't agree to play in this zone of risk. But out here, alone on one of the biggest mountains in the world, I appreciated that the primary risk was predictable. Fall, and you were probably going to go the distance. Don't fall, don't lose an edge, and it was good. I like risks like this, risks that are quantifiable and rely on performance, not luck. So I kept acclimatizing, and I kept skiing. Come on. linked 5 turns, so I had to show you guys. I'm like, yeah, I did it. Now, you may have noticed ropes in a lot of these images on steeper terrain. And I think it's important to address. Utilizing ropes during a ski descent, it definitely affects the purity of the ski. For me, every time I use a rope to rappel on my summit descent, I rappelled one full 200-foot pitch and also another second smaller rock band with my ski, one with my skis off, one with my skis on. Or using a rope as a hand line on a few blue ice or dry sections, I would either have a hand or a carabiner clipped into a fixed rope. Those are compromises to the style that I aspire to ski these mountains in. Those compromises were actually in addition to one more, which is I actually didn't ski off the very summit. My team fixed the rope all the way to the summit over very technical terrain. There were 9 other skiers on my summit, 9 other climbers on my summit day trying to go to the top. I got to the top so cold that I couldn't wait for them to clear the rope. So I actually down climbed about 10 to 15 meters below them, climbing, not skiing, put my skis on, and skied the rest of the way. So I think those things are really important to mention. Some people won't care, but those compromises to style, they leave a better ski descent to be done in the future. In the right season, with the right snow and the right skier or snowboarder, Nick Russell, I don't know, are you here? It is possible to ski Makalu from top to bottom without ropes and without removing skis. And I can't wait to celebrate that descent when it happens. And we can't talk about ropes on the mountain without talking about my team. The ropes don't get there by magic. I've been going on and on about how I was alone while I was skiing, and that's true. But the truth is, the skiing was only a tiny part of my expedition. It's a tiny part of any big mountain expedition. Most of the time, we're climbing, and we're carrying big loads, and we're fixing rope, and we're setting camps in wild places. And that work and fun, and the bulk of the 2 months on the mountain, it was shared. And I could never have skied this peak without my teammates. So I want to highlight just a few of the team that made the expedition possible and what they actually accomplished this season. We're going to start with Dorje Sonam Sherpa. Dorje is Alpenglow Expeditions' head Sherpa, one of my closest friends. He's summited Everest 25 times. And we have history together. We actually started climbing together in our early 20s in Nepal. We grew up together climbing, rope fixing, and apparently not wearing sunscreen. It wasn't cool back then. And Dorje is really more like a brother to me. This past winter, he actually provided the blessing at my wedding with Emily in Ecuador. Later that night, he even got a tattoo. I know. That sounds a little strange to get a tattoo at your buddy's wedding, but to put it in context, lots of us got tattoos that night. I got a tattoo, Emily got a tattoo. That's actually Emily's mom on the table in the middle photo getting a tattoo. It was that kind of wedding. Remember, we have a whiskey sponsor. Go Tinka. Dorje on Makalu, though, he's responsible for getting the route to the summit. No one had summited Makalu for 3 years, just climbing, not skiing. No one had summited the mountain for 3 years. And despite more than a dozen teams on the mountain this spring, by the time a perfect ski window came around, no one had gone to the top. Dorje, another Alpenglow Sherpa Pasang, and I fixed the summit route and stood on top. But it was Dorje who led all the technical, exposed, dangerous ridge pitches in whiteout conditions to make that happen. Carla Perez was another of my partners this spring. We're on the Eddie Bauer team together, and it's thanks to them we've been able to do so many adventures and projects together. Carla has summited Everest without oxygen, K2 without oxygen. She's an Alpenglow Expeditions guide. And on Makalu this spring, she just blew my mind with her grit. Carla and I did a load of our early acclimatization trips on the mountain together. And she had this goal to climb independently as possible. She wanted to carry her own tents, carry her own food, carry her own rope, which meant huge backpacks, while also going without supplemental oxygen. This never happens in the big mountains. I guarantee to you that 95% of the people who say they soloed a big mountain, they're stretching the truth. It's just, anyone who's trying to set speed records, anyone who's trying to make ski descents, we get a lot of help from Nepali Sherpa to save energy for our primary goal. But Carla went for as pure a style as possible. And the wild thing was, on the same day I summited, Carla failed. That's not the wild part, stay tuned. She turned around just a few hundred feet below the summit, knowing she was too cold and too tired to summit without oxygen and get down alive. That decision is so big and so hard, and she made it. But what came next is even wilder. Kala descended with us 9,000 feet all the way to base camp. She celebrated with us, and she decided to stay, alone if necessary, to try again. The energy needed to go to 27,500 feet, turn around, go down, recover at 19,000 feet, and then go back up alone, it's superhuman. And Kala did it. 8 days after turning around, she stood on top of Makalu without supplemental oxygen. But you'll notice she wasn't alone. Also in this picture, Esteban Topo Mena. Topo is co-expedition leader with me on all of Alpenglow's Himalayan expeditions. He's also an IFMGA mountain guide, an Eddie Bauer athlete, one of the few cutting-edge alpinists out there trying to climb new routes on huge mixed faces at altitude without oxygen. He's also really good at the duffel shuffle. That's actually why we hire him. But while I was taking my skis for a walk every day this season, Topo was running Alpenglow's commercial team. And when most of the other teams failed to make progress on the mountain with fixing ropes and finding a way, it was Topo that took the lead. Dorje, Pasang, and I fixed that final summit ridge, but Topo, along with our climbing Sherpa and one other team, in large part led and fixed the entire mountain below that summit ridge. Then he went to the top, on oxygen, with clients, the only way to guide, on a perfect day, way better than Dorje and my day. He summited, he turned around, descended, flew a helicopter from base camp back to Kathmandu, partied with the team for 24 hours in the city chaos, hopped back in the helicopter. Yes, Himalayan climbing is changing a lot with the use of helicopters. That's another slideshow for another time. He got back to base camp, immediately started climbing, caught Kala, went 9,000 feet to the summit without supplemental oxygen for the second time in a week. And these examples, like our sport is really changing, and climbers like Topo and Kala are a big part of pushing what was thought possible, climbing fast on technical routes without oxygen, back to back. It's amazing. Finally, Griffin. Yeah! We got some Griffin fans in the room. Griffin's here tonight. He had an epic travel sequence back from Mexico just so he could be here. Griffin's the one that took the good photos and the drone shots of me on Makalu. Any stunner image you see tonight, other than Ming's, they were definitely his. And what's cool is he really became my teammate on the mountain, open to do whatever it took to help the team and my success. He carried big loads. He let the weird singing bowl guy put the bowl on his head and bang the gong so we didn't have to have it done to us. He brought all the tin cup whiskey that we're constantly drinking. And on his 25th birthday, he climbed to 25,000 feet on the mountain to shoot. This from a kid from Nebraska who had only been to 20,000 feet once before, earlier in the year, and whose full-time job is theoretically meant to be riding a desk in the Alpenglow office. Yeah, give it up. But it was each of these teammates and far more support in the background. The cooks, the local logistics operators, the porters, the Alpenglow office team, the meteorologists. It's all of them that gave me a realistic chance to climb and ski Makalu. To have a reasonable safety net on a big mountain like this, it's kind of epic. Our safety net included 5 camps on the mountain that you can see in the picture here. I'm going to see if my mouse works. The helicopter dropped us way down here out of the photo. You can't really see it. Then base camp was down there at 15,000 feet. Advanced base camp was up below the glacier over here at 19,000 feet. Then we put Camp 1 over here at like 21,000 feet. This is really hard doing from the side. We put Camp 2 up here at 22,500 feet. Camp 3 at 24,500 feet right here, the highest point we'd skied the mountain to that point, and then all the way to the summit at 28,000 feet there. It's a lot of work to get those camps in place. But finally, by May 4th, after days of looking at pretty colorful pictures like this, Dorje and I decided that May 9th was the best day for my ski attempt. It was low wind, there was no precipitation, and with the ropes not yet up to the summit, we knew there would be very few other climbers willing to risk an attempt. And this was actually important. Skiing on big peaks has an interesting side effect that a mistake, like primarily a fall while not clipped in, or maybe triggering an avalanche not on the primary climbing line, that can be disastrous not only to you, but to other climbers. And it's pretty important, I think, that we consider those risks on popular peaks, on normal routes, because if we don't want to see skiing banned, we need to consider those things as it becomes more popular. But it was also during those days of looking at weather and considering what day to go, I made the biggest compromise to the style of my climb and ski. I was mentally pretty fried from all the firm conditions and no fall exposure of the weeks of acclimatization. I was stressed that the route was not yet into the summit across the most technical terrain of the climb. And I actually found it especially hard not to have a ski partner to discuss and debate the potential hazards with, or even just to take turns skiing first on the exposed terrain. So I just decided that to finish the route to the summit and to try to ski from the top, I needed to feel as strong as I possibly could and confident in my decision making. And my experience without supplemental oxygen has shown me that I am the exact opposite of strong and confident without oxygen above 27,000 feet. So I decided that on summit day, the last 3,000 feet of the mountain, I would use oxygen to go up and down. This year was not going to be my year to see if I was capable of meeting the bar that Andrej had set on K2. But all of those compromises, that balance, it felt right to me. I was still here, I was still climbing, I was still attempting something that I had dreamt of for a decade, but I'm also going to be a dad. And I hope to be here on this earth for a long, long time. And I hope to be a part of the crew in Tahoe that show and share a life in the mountains and that doing big things in the mountains is possible alongside being a good and present dad. Like Rob Gaffney, Jeremy Jones, Jim Zellers. We have so many great examples of that balance being struck by dads here in Tahoe that I can look up to, and I think it's beautiful. And that's not even beginning to talk to the mom. This is Emily could take care of that in the next slideshow. So we downed our last cup of Sherpa tea, and we went to work on the mountain. We left base camp with a week's worth of supplies. Of course, my Fisher skis that someone now gets to ski on. You get new ones, not mine, I promise. But we passed through each camp. We appreciated all the work our Sherpa teammates had done in the preceding week. So tents were already placed and stocked with food and sleeping bags. Really, the goal of climbing on the summit push is to try to conserve energy for the final day, for the very top. So we moved slowly. We took lots of rest to enjoy the view and to try to figure out where we were going to ski. Trying to get as much sleep as we can in each camp as we go progressively higher. Eating incredible and complicated to prepare meals. I'm an excellent cook at high altitude. And eventually we arrived into Camp 3 of 24,500 feet, the highest point I had been to on all my trips thus far, and the high point of my previous ski attempts. What was left was this. Note, as always, the amazing POW conditions. And I'll zoom in on this photo so you can see kind of the route. You traverse across the plateau. See if I can find my mouse. You can actually see the trail down here. Long traverse. Then up a little hidden snow valley you can't see between these rocks. Past this incredible jumbled ice fall through here, up and into the Seracs, through the Seracs to this hanging snowfield, through what's called the French Couloir up to this ridge, which we knew was going to have great snow on it, all the way to the false summit, and then around the false summit and to the true top. That was the plan. We woke up at 11 p.m. We put on sunscreen. See, remember that picture of me and Dorje 20 years ago? This is proof I can change. Watch this sunscreen application. It went on for 7 minutes. That's at 11 p.m. at night, negative 20-degree temperatures at 25,000 feet. Take my skin seriously. But then we climbed, and it was a stunning night. We felt strong. By 5 a.m., Dorje, Pasang, and I, we had passed the dozen or so other climbers attempting that night. So we were breaking trail as the sun came up, and we got underneath the French Couloir, which I knew would be the crux of the ski line.
So, it's official. The French Couloir this spring is not looking so skiable right here. below for sure. But this a little bit fail. Well, it's fun.
It wasn't what I wanted, but more or less, the line went.
Makalu! Here we go! Wow.
Makalu was my fourth complete ski descent of an 8,000 meter peak, and by far my most challenging. The descent took 11 hours with almost zero margin for mistakes. I still can't believe it worked out.
There's Adrian Ballinger on his skis. Fucking crazy, man.
We skied Makalu.
We skied Makalu. I actually still can't quite figure out what's more shocking, that it worked out and I got to ski the mountain, or that skiing 8,500 feet of vertical, like 4 KTs, took 11 hours. Or maybe that 6 months later, this is what my world looks like, reading a newspaper to a 5-week-old. Yeah, thanks. To all the parents out there, whatever stage you're in, like, seriously, cheers. Like, I said I like hard and audacious things. I like expedition-style life. I like not knowing the outcome of an adventure, and it's all right here. I am so blown away and impressed by all of you, and I know the same thing that gave me the ability to pull off a ski descent of Makalu, it's also going to be the thing that gets me through Raising Arrow. It's teammates. And I have the best damn teammates in the world. So thank you, Tahoe. Thank you, Alpenglow Expeditions. Thank you, family and friends. All of you. Thank you. Thank you. So I think we're gonna have a few minutes for questions. If you have some, we're gonna grab a couple from online and a couple. There's a microphone in the middle of the room. If you have a question, get on up there. And obviously, don't forget about the rest of the Winter Speakers series that will be coming up over the next few weeks. But questions?
Okay, Adrian. Y'all, let's give it up for Adrian one more time. Come on, that was awesome.
Thanks.
So if anyone does have questions, there's a microphone dead center under the spotlight here. Our first question we have from an online viewer. They ask, from an admitted city dweller, why climb these mountains without supplemental oxygen? Is it just to know the limits of your body and your skills?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I'm so proud of all of the ascents I've made of 8,000 meter peaks with oxygen or without. Far more have been with than without. But for me, what I found was with oxygen, I knew I could make it to the summit. And that's important while guiding, but as an individual, a personal, like, athlete, like, I wanted the outcome to be unknown. And without oxygen, the outcome is a lot more unknown than with. And so that's what kind of inspired me to give it a try. After watching clients and friends of mine struggle so hard on the mountain, I wanted to feel that struggle for myself. Oh,
Okay.
we got a question.
Do you have any plans for climbing any more mountains?
Oh, yes. The question, do I have plans for climbing any more mountains? Absolutely. I love the mountains. I can't wait to keep climbing for myself, with my son, with my wife, with people here in this room. And I think it's possible to climb big mountains and to raise a family. So yes, absolutely. But I'm not in any rush to go back to the Himalaya.
Cool.
Thank you.
Let's give Elwin a big round of applause for standing up here. Brave soul. Okay, another question from an online viewer, Adrian. This is a parenting question.
Oh boy.
With two
I'm 5 weeks in. I know it all.
with two extraordinary parents, Sprinkle, now Arrow, will probably be born a mountaineer. But what if Sprinkle has no interest in the mountains at all?
We're actually totally convinced that's exactly what's going to happen. So for our friends in Tahoe, many of you know we're not mountain bikers, but everyone loves mountain biking in this town. So we're kind of just assuming that our kid is going to be like all mountain biking all around, all the time. And I think that's cool. Maybe I'll get to learn a new sport and hopefully not break myself too much with my lack of spatial awareness. And I think my goal for Arrow, and I hope it works out, is that he finds a passion. He finds something that he loves as much as I love climbing and skiing. And whatever that is, I'm going to do my damnedest to support him.
All right, thanks everyone for coming. Travel safe. Adrian, we love you. Thank you. We'll see you on January 19th.
Thank you. You.